Hey guys, tonight we drift into a fog-choked London where gas lamps flicker, iron boots clatter down cobbled lanes, and unopened letters thump in bags against tired postmen who look like they haven't slept since the last ice age. You're stepping into the world of Victorian mail, and trust me, you probably won't survive this if you insist on licking every questionable envelope along the way. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments, because I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tug your coat a little tighter as you wander down Aldersgate Street, the sooty air clinging to your lungs like wet wool. It's past midnight, and yet the city refuses to sleep. London in the 1840s is restless, horses stamping, drunks singing off-key, and somewhere far off, the Thames makes that unpleasant, I smell industrial waste perfume that nobody asked for. You hear the rhythmic slap of leather against stone, a postman's satchel bouncing at his side. Victorian London does not stop for darkness. There are letters to move, secrets to carry, and schedules to meet. Even if the schedules are oppressive, confusing, and designed by someone who clearly hated joy. The night posts, as you soon learn, are an entire underground ballet of movement. While most households curl under itchy blankets and dream of not dying of cholera, you trudge beside the lone uniformed courier who mutters about his route. Here's your first mainstream fact of the night. The Royal Mail, by the early Victorian era, was already one of the most organized postal systems in the world. Regular collection times, uniforms, sorting stations, far ahead of many European neighbors. But here's the weird twist. The better the system got, the more absurd rules multiplied. Historians still argue whether bureaucrats created new regulations to solve problems or simply needed a hobby. Your postman companion stops under a lamp and grumbles about fees. You raise an eyebrow. Fees for what? Breathing near a letter? Well, close. Victorian postage before the penny post is a mess. You discover odd, punishing charges. Costs vary by distance, sheet count, and even which road your letter traveled on. You think you're mailing a sweet, affectionate message to Aunt Charlotte, but suddenly you owe enough money to fund 3 weeks of tea. One French tidbit you stumble upon: in some districts, recipients, not senders, paid postage, and many refused the letter at the door to dodge the cost. Imagine standing at home in your nightcap, being told you owe coin just to see what someone wrote. No wonder people eventually revolted for cheaper mail. You follow the courier across a narrow bridge, boots echoing. Beneath you, the water shivers, reflecting hazy light. The air tastes metallic, and for a moment you question your life choices. Letters had to move through this every night: rain, smog, or the very special London combination known as toxic Victorian soup. A horse-drawn mail cart rattles by, wheels dripping sludge. The driver gives a half-asleep nod. Everything feels damp: the letters, your coat, your spirit. And yes, that was joke number 1. Expect at least 2 more before you escape this section. Soon you stumble upon a cramped postal checkpoint. Lanterns sway overhead as clerks scratch notes into ledgers. Nobody smiles. The room is stacked to the ceiling with envelopes, packages, and questionable odors. You spot a notice board plastered with fines and warnings. One outrageous rule leaps out. If a postman damaged mail, part of his wages could be docked. You look at the slippery floors, the weather-soaked bags, the rats eyeing the string on parcels like gourmet pasta. Clearly, this job is built for suffering. Your night continues as you trail the postboys, teen messengers barely older than 15 racing through alleys. They're underpaid, overworked, and regularly chased by stray dogs. You watch one sprint, leap a puddle, nearly get flattened by a carriage, and then vanish into the mist. You wonder how many actually made it through a full week. That's joke number 2, but honestly, it's barely a joke. The dangers stack higher. Not every street is safe after dark. Highwaymen may be fading in this era, but thieves still know postal routes. Letters can contain money, bond notes, or scandalous secrets worth blackmail. A bag of mail is a treasure chest on a strap. You walked faster. Yet through all this chaos, the system somehow functions. At scheduled hours, mail bags are exchanged with military precision, clerks sort by candlelight, horses change at staging posts. Messages cross the city overnight, an early example of the 24-hour cycle we now take for granted. You pause, absorbing the rhythm of it. Beneath the grime and absurdity lies a strange efficiency. Just before dawn, you and the courier climb Ludgate Hill. The sky bruises purple. He wipes his brow and hands off the final bag of the shift. His pay is low, his shoes are soaked, and his breakfast will probably be bland porridge. But London's letters have moved. Again. One more loop completed, one more night survived. And you yawn because even in an imaginary Victorian postal adventure, exhaustion is contagious. But stick with me. This night is only the prologue.
You barely catch a breath before the next wave of duty crashes over you. There is no pause, no reset, no cheerful good morning in the Victorian postal universe. The night bleeds into day, and the day collapses back into night. And you, the unfortunate traveler in this soot-flavored timeline, are dragged along for the ride. The streets are awake again, louder than ever, and the mail must now stretch beyond London's crammed arteries and out into the vast countryside. Suddenly, the ground trembles beneath you, not from industry or thunder, but from hooves. Lots of hooves. You turn, and there it is, a Royal Mail coach, lacquered and imposing, splattered with yesterday's mud, harnessed to a team of horses that look like they're regretting every life choice that led them here. The driver, eyes baggy and red, raises a brow as if to ask, "You're ridin' or what?" You climb aboard, and with a crack of the whip, you're off. The first mile is fine, charming even. A breeze grazes your face, and you start thinking, hey, maybe this part won't be so bad. But then the wheels hit a crater, no, a canyon in the road, and your spine attempts to escape through your ears. The countryside turnpikes are chaotic, rutted, and patched by workers who clearly subscribe to the philosophy of, good enough. You cling to the coach as it sways and jolts like a possessed carnival ride. One mainstream historical fact emerges as you rattle along. Before rail dominated, Britain's mail coaches were timed to the minute, and missing a departure could mean losing your job. Horse, weather, thieves, none of that was an excuse. The route ran, and you kept up, or you were out. The rhythm settles into a relentless pattern. Hoofbeats, wheels, wind, repeat. You pass toll gates where sleepy clerks lift barriers with all the enthusiasm of wilted cabbage. The driver mutters about robberies on the northern routes. Mail money, parcels, payroll, they'll take anything, he grunts. You ever seen a man try to outrun a horse with a sack of letters? You shake your head. Well, he sighs, neither did he. That's joke number one. Grim, but you asked for authenticity. Your next discovery arrives when the coach stops to rest the horses at a staging post. Inside a dim inn, steaming mugs slam onto tables, boots scrape the floor, and couriers swap strange postal lore like fishermen telling tall tales. One character brags he delivered a letter faster than a rival route because his horse had better morals. Another swears a colleague once tried to send a goose through the mail, which would actually later become a much-debated topic, because yes, Victorians genuinely pushed the boundaries of what counts as mailable. You make a mental note that you will eventually witness even stranger rules. Bellies filled and horses swapped, you roll onward, but now the conversation turns to secrecy. Quiet letters, hidden meanings, codes. One courier taps his nose. People think envelopes are safe, but ink lies. You perk up, intrigued. Here comes the quirky tidbit of this section. Victorians often used micro-writing, invisible ink, or seemingly innocent phrases that concealed scandalous messages. Lovers wrote about flower gardens that weren't really gardens. Spies used laundry references that weren't about laundry.
and some citizens mailed blank sheets on purpose, knowing recipients could decode pinpricks or tiny corner folds. Historians still argue whether postal officials knowingly ignored these secret practices or simply couldn't keep up. Back in motion, you test your balance again as the coach leaps over stones. As you cling to the wooden frame, another shift in the story approaches, a postal earthquake, the penny post. You don't arrive in London to witness it, you feel its cultural aftershock rippling across every mile. You overhear townsfolk talking at rest stops, you catch glimpses of posters, you notice the volume of letters exploding like overboiled pudding. This is your key historical fact. In 1840, uniform penny postage changed everything. For a single penny, anyone could send a letter anywhere in the country. Suddenly, the postal system wasn't just a luxury, it became the nervous system of Victorian daily life. Love confessions, business deals, academic debates, gossip, petty insults, breakups, proposals, complaints about soup, all now affordable. There were people who mailed multiple letters a day just because they could. One father allegedly wrote his daughter so often that she complained, "Papa, I cannot read fast enough to stay ahead of you." Joke number 2, technically real, still funny. This democratization of communication hits you as profoundly as the wind hitting your face through the open coach window. You realize you're witnessing a rare transformation, a society becoming connected in real time. But naturally, human beings being human beings, chaos follows. Postal volumes skyrockets, clerks drown in paper, sorting offices stack mail to the rafters. Arguments erupt about manpower, scheduling, and costs. Historians still argue whether the early system was truly efficient or merely heroically overwhelmed. As evening bleeds in again, your coach finally approaches another relay town. Lamps glow in windows, horses pant. You disembark, stretching limbs that now feel like they've aged several decades. The driver tips his hat and rides on, but your journey doesn't pause. Mail bags are handed off, runners disperse, and sorting begins anew. Inside a cramped posting office, you watch clerks armed with nothing but candlelight and brute willpower tackle the tidal wave of envelopes. You study the process. Bags opened, bundles tied, routes assigned, timestamps applied. The room is loud, hot, and somehow also freezing near the drafty door. In that swirling tension, something becomes clear. The penny post didn't just connect people, it trapped workers in an endless cycle of hurry. Voices argue about overtime. A clerk swears someone keeps eating his bread. Another criticizes an inefficient route. Then someone mentions an ongoing debate about whether prepaid postage, stamps, or payment on delivery is morally superior. I suppress a laugh. Victorians would debate anything. But you also sense pride here. Exhausted pride, but pride nonetheless. The system might wobble, but it stands. And thanks to horse, mud, sweat, and stamps, even the poorest citizen can now send a thought across distance. You rub your eyes. This day has been long. Your clothes smell like wet leather. Your hair feels like it fought a windstorm and lost. Yet the journey is far from finished. Beyond these roads and rest stops lie deeper mysteries, dead letters, secrets, scandals, and rules that would break your modern brain. For now, though, the candles burn low, the mail is sorted, and you surrender to momentary stillness. Morning will demand more from you. It always does.
Dawn creeps in reluctantly, seeping through the cracks of the sorting office windows as if it's not entirely sure it wants to witness what's inside. You're back on your feet, again, eyes sandy and throat raw from breathing Victorian air, half fog, half soot, half existential despair. Around you, the clatter of wooden trays and clinking of sealing wax never stops. The piles of correspondence look infinite, but something new catches your eye. A locked door marked dead letters. Naturally, you can't resist. You slip inside, and the air changes. The room feels colder, quieter. Even the mice seem to tiptoe. It's filled with mountains of undeliverable mail, letters with smudged addresses, parcels with no return names, envelopes torn open just enough to whisper their secrets. A woman clerk works silently at a desk, sorting through the lost and the forgotten. "Dead letters," she murmurs, "the mail that never found its way." One mainstream historical fact for you: the Dead Letter Office really existed, handling millions of undeliverable pieces a year. Some contained money, some marriage proposals, others tiny tragedies, baby shoes, locks of hair, dried flowers never meant to wilt unseen. You pick up a letter addressed simply "To my dearest," near the bakery. No surname, no street, no chance. The clerk sighs. People always think their world is smaller than it is. That's joke number one, if you can call it a joke. But the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. Here's your quirky tidbit. Clerks in the Victorian Dead Letter Office often had to read the contents of private letters to guess their destination. Imagine that. Your diary of heartbreak suddenly becomes a detective puzzle for a bored bureaucrat with tea stains on her cuff. Historians still argue whether this invasion of privacy was necessary efficiency or moral trespass. You stand there, wondering how many love stories ended here, sealed by incompetence and geography. Then, like an echo of your thought, a man's voice from behind says, "Not all letters die quietly." You turn to see an inspector in uniform, his expression sharp as sealing wax. He gestures you toward another room. You follow and step into a shadowy corridor lined with cabinets. Thousands of letters confiscated, seized, or opened under the authority of the Crown. "Postal espionage," he says flatly, as if discussing the weather. You realize you've stumbled into one of the era's least advertised truths. The government routinely monitored mail. They called it the secret office, and it operated for decades, quietly reading correspondence in the name of national security. The inspector shrugs. You'd be surprised how many revolutions begin with ink and paper. You think of all those invisible hands breaking wax seals, reading forbidden lines, then resealing the envelope so neatly that the recipient would never know. It's unsettling. You glance at one open letter on his desk. It's a love confession written entirely in rhyme. "Dangerous stuff," the inspector mutters. "Makes people act unpredictably." Joke number two. When you step back outside, the city feels different. You can't unsee the invisible threads of surveillance woven into every message. The penny post that once felt liberating now hums with quiet paranoia. You imagine thousands of hands touching every sheet before it arrives. Trust, it seems, always has postage due. Later, in a quieter corner of the office, another clerk shows you the process of stamping and postmarking, simple circles of ink that decide the fate of history. Each mark says when, where, and sometimes who handled a letter. Collectors, a century later, will obsess over these details. But here and now, it's just routine. Still, debates rage about timing discrepancies. Some postmasters stamp before dispatch, some after delivery. Historians still argue whether a late mark was human error or deliberate deceit. You nod, secretly amused that even in a world of horsehair and handwriting, people already found ways to manipulate time. You wander among sacks of outgoing mail, eyes tracing the looping script of countless strangers. Each piece a story, every story a fragment of life, and every fragment balanced between arrival and oblivion. The weight of it presses down. And yet there's beauty here too. The postal system, for all its absurdity, holds the collective heartbeat of an empire in its paper veins. By late afternoon, you've grown fond of the chaos. The clerks gossip, the ink stains multiply, and someone swears loudly after spilling sealing wax on their shoe. Another worker laughs until she coughs. Nobody pauses. Nobody truly rests. The rhythm of correspondence is relentless, addictive, and faintly tragic. You understand now why some employees spend decades here. To leave would feel like stepping out of time itself. A bell rings. Collection hour. You help tie the bundles, feeling their strange warmth from the heat of the press. Outside, fresh couriers wait with their satchels, ready to dash into the drizzle. You glance one last time toward the dead letter room. For a moment, you swear you hear whispers behind the door, millions of unsent words still trying to reach someone, somewhere. And then the moment fades, swallowed by the sound of hooves and rain.
The rhythm of hooves gives way to something new, a deep metallic rumble that never seems to stop. The smell of smoke thickens, and the streets vibrate under your boots. You follow the sound down into the echoing bowels of a rail yard where a black iron serpent waits, the mail train. Steam hisses from its joints like the exhalation of a sleepless giant. "Welcome," says a tired man in a soot-streaked cap, "to the night mail." You climb aboard. The carriage is narrow, lined with hanging bags, cubbyholes, and men in waistcoats sorting letters mid-motion. You barely find your footing before the whistle shrieks and the train lurches forward. Sparks flash past the window. One mainstream historical fact. By the 1850s, Britain's traveling post office was fully operational, sorting mail while speeding down the track, an innovation that cut delivery times in half. The car shudders and clanks, every surface vibrating. You can't hear yourself think, but the clerks somehow keep rhythm, tossing letters into slots with uncanny precision. A young sorter grins at you through the fog. "Don't mind the noise. You get used to it." You nod, but your teeth are already rattling in your skull. He shouts, "We sort 2,000 an hour, give or take what the bumps steal." That's joke number one, shouted over the roar. Hours blur. The countryside streaks past in gray ribbons. At each junction, mailbags are hurled out onto platforms and fresh ones snatched in with iron hooks. No stopping, no slewing. You think it's miraculous. You also think it's mildly insane. The air smells of oil, sweat, and singed paper. Someone hums tunelessly to stay awake. You realize this train never truly sleeps. It merely switches routes. By morning, the crew changes. The new supervisor warns you. Rules matter here. Weight, timing, contents. The wrong parcel can get you dismissed or fined. He points to a box labeled "Fragile, Eggs." You raise an eyebrow. Yes, he sighs. People try to post eggs. Welcome to the world of weird delivery rules. The farther you travel, the stranger the restrictions become. You read aloud from a battered guidebook. No animals, no explosives, reasonable. No filthy garments, debatable. And definitely no corpses. Unless, of course, you're paying the special coffin rate, which is very real. That's your quirky tidbit. You can, in fact, post a body in Victorian Britain, provided you follow the form. Historians still argue whether that reflects practicality or collective madness. You laugh quietly. It feels like bureaucracy's greatest performance art, deciding how dead is too dead for postage. At the next station, you stretch your legs and wander through a depot stacked with crates bound for far-off colonies. India, Cape Town, Malta, the labels read. Ships creak at the docks beyond, their holds swallowing letters sealed weeks ago. The global reach of the British postal empire hits you with a dizzying scale. Mail bound for Calcutta might ride train, cart, camel, and steamer, all before some half-asleep clerk opens it months later. You ask a supervisor how they keep track. He shrugs. We don't always. The imperial routes fascinate and unsettle you. Every bag of correspondence is a thread tying London to everywhere else. Commerce, control, curiosity, all tangled together. You meet a sailor who carries outbound mail and incoming gossip. He confides, "Sometimes we deliver news of deaths before the official notice arrives." You stare out toward the gray sea, thinking about time zones and tragedy, about words that arrive too soon or too late. Night again. The train roars inland, iron wheels hammering rhythmically against the track. You drift in and out of half-sleep as stations flash by like ghost towns.
Somewhere between Birmingham and Bristol, you dream of envelopes with wings. Then a sudden jolt throws you awake. Sparks shower outside. The clerks hardly blink. "Just a cow on the line," someone mutters. You add that to your growing list of dangers, alongside thieves, fires, and the occasional bored inspector testing staff alertness. Yet through all the absurdity, the system persists. Every mile hums with human stubbornness. Joke number 2 arrives courtesy of an older sorter who winks and says, "We once mailed a banjo to Scotland and heard it playing when it got there." You can't tell if he's lying or if the mail truly has its own music. As dawn stains the horizon pink, the train finally slows. Letters have flown across the country in less than a night, bridging distances that once took days. You step down onto the platform, legs trembling, ears ringing. The air here smells of coal and triumph. In the quiet that follows, you realize the Victorian postal world is no longer confined to carriages and couriers. It's a living network of motion, a mechanical heartbeat that never rests. The sky lightens, revealing smudges of ink on your fingertips. You almost smile. Somewhere in the noise and the nonsense, there's a strange beauty to it all. Human effort rendered in schedules, soot, and stamps. You brush the dust from your coat and follow the trail of mailbags toward yet another station where someone shouts for help unloading the next round. There's no end to it. Not yet.
The morning drifts in like steam, soft and silver, curling through the half-open windows of the General Post Office. You blink against the light, realizing you've been awake for nearly 2 days, yet the hum of sorting and stamping never truly ends. The clerks move slower now, gentler, as if London itself has grown tired of its own busyness. You lean against the post rack and watch a fresh crew arrive, faces young, coats pressed, eyes bright with that doomed optimism that comes before routine takes hold. Around you, the machinery of communication hums to life. You pass tables stacked with canceled stamps and letters waiting for redirection, and you notice how even the smallest details, the steady scrape of pen nibs, the faint perfume of sealing wax, somehow feel comforting. The postal world has become its own kind of city, nested inside the larger one, a miniature London of corridors, cubbyholes, whispers, and quiet dramas that never make the papers. You drift toward a side office where a kettle rattles on the hob. A clerk named Miss Farewell, her name honestly too poetic to be real, offers you tea thick enough to stand a spoon in. "We drink it like this so we can stay awake," she says, smiling. You sip and feel your heartbeat catch up with your body again. She tells you that most of the staff have been here since dawn, and some even sleep on benches when the weather turns. The post never stops. Only we do sometimes. That's your mainstream historical fact. Victorian postal workers often logged 16-hour days, 6 days a week. Sundays were supposed to be sacred, but complaints about lost time meant many offices quietly opened anyway. Historians still argue whether it was devotion to duty or fear of losing wages that kept them going. Someone begins humming a tune in the next room, half lullaby, half work song. You recognize the melody. It's been following you since the coach rides and railway nights. The sound makes the room feel safe. Here, under flickering gaslight, surrounded by paper, time slows down. You wander between long rows of pigeonholes, each labeled slot, Bristol, York, Aberdeen, feels like a heartbeat in the nation's chest. The clerks drop letters into them with practiced precision, their movements hypnotic. You can tell who's new by the occasional missort, which earns a sigh but not much more. A man in spectacles glances up and mutters, "Accuracy is mercy. Missed deliveries ruin mornings." Joke number 1. Quiet, polite, the sort that makes you smile into your teacup. Beyond the sorting floor sits the innovation room, a fancy term for a workshop cluttered with failed experiments. Here, the Victorian imagination has gone mildly feral. You find curious contraptions, an early letter-folding machine that jams more often than it folds, a tiny steam engine meant to stamp envelopes automatically, and, pride of place, a brass tube network that hisses faintly. London's pneumatic mail. That's your quirky tidbit. By the 1860s, parts of the city actually used compressed air tubes to fire canisters of letters between offices. The speed was miraculous, the noise less so. One engineer laughs and says, half the time the tubes misfire and someone gets a surprise in the face. You step back just in case. Historians still argue whether the pneumatic post was a brilliant innovation or a public relations stunt that impressed investors more than it served the public. You, however, love it instantly. It's ridiculous, charming, and perfectly Victorian, ambition wrapped in brass. Outside, a drizzle begins, soft enough to make the windows shimmer. You rest your forehead against the glass and watch umbrellas bloom like dark flowers below. Somewhere out there, thousands of Londoners are writing letters that will pass through this building tonight. Apologies, declarations, news of births, news of losses. Every scrap of paper, a fragment of the city's soul. You realize that for all its bureaucracy and bustle, the postal system is essentially an act of faith, trusting words to travel unguarded through so many hands. Miss Farewell joins you again, holding a small envelope. She says, "Found this in the missorted pile." The handwriting is familiar, looping, a little untidy. You blink. It's addressed simply to the curious traveler. No street, no district, yet somehow it found you. You open it carefully. Inside, a single line. Keep walking. The world is full of quiet messages. You look up, but she's already gone back to her desk. Joke number 2 writes itself. Apparently, even the Victorian Post delivers unsolicited life advice. You pocket the note and wander down the main hall one last time. Porters lug sacks toward the evening dispatch, boots squeaking. The scent of wet wool and candle soot hangs in the air. You feel oddly peaceful. The system may be flawed, overworked, occasionally absurd, yet it functions, powered entirely by ordinary people doing extraordinary things in small increments. A senior clerk calls out final tallies. All outbound accounted for. A cheer rises, half irony, half pride. You find yourself smiling. Somewhere deep in those sorted stacks, someone's long-delayed letter will finally arrive. Someone will open an envelope and feel less alone. That thought follows you as you step outside in the misting rain. The lamps are halos now, blurring the street in gold and silver. Carriages rattle past, their wheels whispering over puddles. You imagine each of them carrying unseen messages, promises sealed in wax. The night swells softly around you. London hums. You take one last breath of that damp, inky air and walk toward the faint glow of the river, listening to the muffled bells marking another hour. The postal world turns quietly behind you, steady as a heartbeat. The sounds begin to fade. The stamping presses, the horses, the murmured counting of letters. Even the drizzle seems to hush itself out of respect. You slow your steps, letting the rhythm of your breath settle with the city's. Every exhale drifts like mist into the gaslight. The cobblestones beneath your feet glisten. The lamps ripple on the Thames like rows of sleepy candles. You feel the weight of the mailbag slip from your shoulder, replaced by an easy stillness. Somewhere, a clock chimes the quarter hour, soft and round, a lullaby made of brass. You think about the thousands of unseen hands keeping the world connected, each one performing a tiny kindness that no one ever notices. The thought warms you more than the coal-smoked air ever could. You imagine the letters still traveling tonight, rustling gently in their sacks, patient and certain that they'll reach someone who needs them. You pause on a bridge, watching a mailboat glide under the arches. Its lantern swings lazily, and for a moment, it looks like the moon itself has decided to deliver the last message of the day. You smile at the absurd beauty of it all. The city exhales. You do too. The sound of paper on paper fades into the rhythm of your own heartbeat. Soon, your eyes grow heavy. The fog thickens, folding the streets into velvet. The mail runs on without you. Steady, dependable, eternal. You let go of the last word, the last image, the last lamp, and drift quietly into sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.